Hey, family, welcome to the Recalibrate podcast. It's your host, Esther Glory, and this is a new episode. Welcome, guys. Welcome to episode 5, which is titled Identity times Purpose, the Crown. We are going to be talking about all things the authority of the believer and how authority plays a role in us finding our identity and also finding our purpose. Now, before we get into that, I just want to say thank you so much to all of you who have been sending me feedback and who have been creating this little online community with me, sharing your thoughts on the podcast and even sharing about your challenges each week. If you would like to get involved and you would like to share more with me, feel free to email recalibrateuk@gmail.com or to DM Recalibrate Podcast at the Recalibrate Podcast on Instagram or at GloryO_ on Instagram. Also, thank you guys so much. This little community I am enjoying so much, but you guys are sharing all your thoughts with me and even the Recalibrate challenges of the week and how you've been finding them. And I really genuinely do appreciate all of you getting back to me and hearing how you're being impacted, and how you're being able to get something from the podcast, which is what we are about. We are a community and we do this together. Okay. Now, to jump right into the episode, we're going to be talking today about the authority of the believer and what role that plays in our ability to become, but also to do. And we're going to be looking at so many different things. We're going to look at authority, what it is and what it isn't. We are going to look at submission and we are going to look at sonship. And we are going to look at how we can exercise those things to become who God has ordained for us to become and to do what He has ordained for us to do, which is part of our mantra here at the Recalibrate podcast and in our Recalibrate community. But before we go into the main body of the episode, we are going to jump right in with the random musing of my heart for this week. So, this week, what I have genuinely been thinking about is how we can incorporate rest into a world that is crazy. Now, I've been reading a book, Quiet, The Power of Introverts in a World That's Always Talking, by, I believe, Susan Cain. That's not a book plug, but take it as you will. But yeah, I've been reading that book and I've been reading it in small doses. And a thought that came to my mind while I was reading it is how to incorporate rest and stillness and solitude, not isolation, solitude into a world where everything is crazy, a diary and a schedule that's booked back to back, hour to hour, meeting to meeting, but how to incorporate rest. And one of the things that I've been thinking about is how I can better be still. Now, I'm not talking about to meditate on anything or time with God, or that those things are all important. But even for myself to be able to hear myself think and to be able to allow the Spirit of God to breathe upon my own thought life, it takes a level of stillness. And that's something that I'm trying to master and I've been thinking about this week. And so the random musing of my heart this week is that if God even chose on the seventh day to rest, as we are told in Genesis, we must also learn to incorporate rest and let it be a weapon. In our stillness, God can speak. In our stillness, we can hear and process out our own thoughts, our own emotions, but using rest as a weapon to be able to become and to do, and to even make room to hear the voice of God so that we can become and do. So that's been my thought this week, how I can use rest and incorporate it so that I can have a level of stillness that will guide me and guard me. I was speaking to one of my friends this week and I was talking about a particular scenario that happened, I think last year or the year before. And I was speaking to her about how I was caught off guard by the scenario, that when I found out or when everything happened, I was kind of like, oh my gosh, I wasn't expecting for that to happen. And I was like, why was I caught off guard? And it was because there had been red flags. There had been things that popped up in the months leading up to it happening that I wasn't actually aware of and I didn't pay attention to because so much was going on in my world. And so, in order to guard myself and to guard as a measure to guard my heart, I even need to practice resting so that I can pay attention to my community, to my surroundings, to what's happening in my world, because it's happening around me. And so, yeah, that would be the random musing of my heart for this week. Choose rest as a weapon. Choose stillness as a weapon. Choose solitude as a recharging, as a weapon, as measure to guide and to guard you. Wisdom is the principal thing, and that is a point of wisdom, a word of wisdom, to make sure that we choose rest to guide and to guard our well-being. You can improve your standard of living by choosing rest. And that's something that's included in our noble work, which we spoke about last week. So that's the random musing of my heart for this week. I hope that blesses you. Let me know your thoughts on it. Tag me on Instagram at @GloryO_ at the Recalibrate podcast, or email us at recalibrateuk@gmail.com. But let's get into it. Let's get into the main body of this episode. And so I'm going to speak about the authority of the believer. And I'm going to speak about the fact that authority is given to believers, and it's not just for an elect few, but it is given to each person who is saved. And we're going to dig into what true authority in Christ is and what ways we can practically live that authority out. But I want us to know that authority is not just for a select few, but authority is for every person who believes in Jesus Christ and comes into salvation through Jesus Christ. Now, what is authority? Authority is different from power. A lot of us use those words synonymously, but authority and power are different things. Now, we can't look at authority without looking at power, and we can't look at power without looking at authority, but they are two separate things. Now, power in the Cambridge English Dictionary is the ability to control people or events, or to have influence. That's what power is, the ability to control people or events, or it could be called influence. Now, authority in the Cambridge English Dictionary is the moral or legal right to exercise ability to control. So power is the ability to control, but authority is the moral and or legal right to exercise that ability to control. So you can have power, but it can be illegal. It can be without authority. But in order to have true power, it is to have authority to exercise that power. Now, biblically, there are also two different words that are used for it. Power is dunamis in the Greek, dunamis, dunamis in the Greek, which is an inherent characteristic of God, and it is demonstrated in his nature. So in miracles, signs, wonders, his power, his presence, his glory. Those are ways that we can see the tangible power of God. But authority is a completely separate word in the Greek. It is exousia, which is exousia, exousia in the Greek. And this speaks about the position, the posture for power. It speaks about the position and the posture for power. And it speaks about, even the definition also gives us an insight into how we gain authority. And it speaks about inheritance of identity, which is something we're passionate here about. And it also speaks about it being legitimate of the demonstrative power of God. So sometimes we can see people. So for example, a lot of people speak about the fact that, oh, you don't just see people like do great things and like buy into what they're doing because you don't know its source, you don't know who they're doing it for. And it is the truth. To exercise a certain level of power, it requires authority. So for example, I'm based in the UK. Now, our prime minister has powers to do certain things. He can make commands, he can give commands, sorry, or he can make orders and things like that, and they are done. Not necessarily because of who he is and the power that he has, but it is mainly because of his authority by election into the position. Now, that is blessing me even as I'm talking it through. But power and authority are two different things. And people can have influence by manipulation. People can have influence and power by negatively guiding the thoughts of those that they lead. Power is one thing, but authority is another. And authority is what sets us up to live out the power of our identity and the power of our purpose in the best way possible. I always say Jesus is my perfect picture. He is who I aspire to become like, and he is the person that I am conforming to his image. And so I always say Jesus is my perfect picture. But Jesus demonstrated his power and it being derived from his authority as the Son of God, because the two were an inseparable testimony of his divine nature. Now, in basic form, Now, in basic form, that basically just means that Jesus did everything that he did when he came to the earth because he could as the Son of God, not because he wanted to um, not because he wanted to just show miracle signs and wonders or the power of God so that he could glory in the things he was doing in the earth, but he was doing it as part of an assignment that his father had sent him on. And he would always declare, I'm only doing this because I've seen my father do it. I'm only doing this because this is what my father wills for me to do. But he never just did anything just because. He always did it because of his authority as the Son of God. He always did it as his authority as being one with God. And so yeah, I would definitely say that Jesus is our perfect picture of authority and power in action. Now, why do we have authority? We have authority and we have a position as children of God. We have been given access back to the Father by Jesus' sacrifice. And Acts 4:12 lets us know that we can only have this salvation, we can only have this access, we can only have relationship with God because of Jesus Christ. Now, we have this authority so that we can be positioned and postured to be able to live out God's intent for our lives. We have this because of sonship. I'm going to quickly read a scripture. My favorite scripture about sonship is Romans 8:15. Romans 8:15, and I'm going to quickly read that out because it really explains the new relationship that we now have and what authority comes from this relationship as well. Romans 8:15, which says in the Amplified Version, for you have not received a spirit of slavery leading again to fear of God's judgment, but you have received the spirit of adoption as sons, the spirit producing sonship, by which we joyfully cry, Abba, Father. Now, Abba is a word which it's an Aramic word used by young children when addressing their fathers. And Jesus used this word often when he was speaking about his father-son relationship with God. And so, yeah, and Abba is made up of several words, and part of the word is meaning source or where you come from, and things like that. So this new level of sonship has given us authority, and this authority is for different things. We can use this authority in terms of spiritual warfare. We can use this authority in terms of prayer and the way we pray to God, the place that we pray from. This authority can impact our lives at every level. But what I specifically want to speak about is authority in terms of our identity and our purpose. And this is why I called it the crown, because I really wanted to speak about the kingly nature that God has given to each and every single one of us to live out. Now, I wanted to speak specifically about, I've spoken about authority and I've introduced it to us, and I wanted to speak about authority in identity. Now, as sons of God, having a source, having a place that we know we come from, having a position, having posture, these things allow us to live out who God wants us to become, because we know that He has planned this identity and He has given us authority in our identity. Now, some people think, oh, but I copy this person, and why doesn't it happen for me the way it happens for them? Because you aren't them, and their access to God and their authority isn't in the same, it's at the same level, but it's not in the same dynamic that you have with God, because He created you in His image and in His likeness, but as a unique expression of Him. And so they will never be able to express Jesus Christ the way that you do, but you will also never be able to express Jesus Christ the way they do and yield the same results, because God has given you authority to be yourself. That bless me. God has given you authority to be yourself. Some of us are still locked up in childhood versions of ourselves. Some of us are still unable to be our complete selves in particular rooms or with particular people. Some of us still relate to certain people as children, or we still relate to certain people as finally an adult, or some of us even choose a parental role in certain people in some of our relationships with particular people. But God has given us authority to be our authentic selves as we are now. Yeah, I love that, because even that's even speaking to me. There are some places where I still don't yet show up as who God has created me to be. A, because I may be unaware. but B, also because I may not want to show up because I may not be sure whether they can handle me. I don't know if this has happened to any of you, but sometimes I can be prepping for something or a talk or to go into a place of opportunity. And sometimes I can be like, oh, you can't say that because this room is too this in terms of dynamics. And I don't really want to rub someone up the wrong way. And now I'm not talking about being socially obnoxious and just going into a room and not being observant and not being excellent in the way that you dissect and you observe and you learn the cultures of the places that you're meant to be in. But I am saying that there is a place for you to be yourself. And if God has given you everything you need pertaining to life and godliness that would aid you in being your true authentic self, then we need to live in that. We need to look towards that. We need to hunger and thirst to find out, who am I in God, and who am I? What has He given me? What has He made me that I am not yet tapping into, because I'm afraid of people, I'm afraid of things, even with the knowledge that I have authority to be who I am. I am a child of God, and He has given me authority to have this identity and to live out this identity. I have authority for my identity. I'm not finding it out in who I choose to love. I'm not finding it out in just my hobbies and my interests. I'm not finding it out by slapdashing all my experiences together and choosing to put that as my identity. I'm not getting my authority from a bunch of external factors. I'm getting my identity from God, and I am being given the authority to live it out daily. And so I must choose my authority in Him over fear, over shame, over doubt. We're going to speak about the imposter syndrome in one of our next episodes, so I don't really want to go into that too tough, but I must choose the authority of my identity in God over shame, over fear, over doubt, over condemnation, over regret. Like, even some of us, even for this year, we are so regretful because we are like, I lost out on so much that I should have been walking in now because of an intense year. But don't walk in regret over authority and who He's made you. The doors of opportunity will swing wide open for us again in 2021, whenever this pandemic lifts. Like, the doors of opportunity will swing open for us again. We can't choose regret over the authority of our identity in Christ Jesus. This is blessing me, listen. But yeah, we must choose our authority and the authority of our identity in God over it all, because we know that if we choose our authority and our identity in God, it will be for our good, because He has told us in Romans 8:28, He will work out all things for our good for those who love Him and are called according to His purpose. And so that way, I'm just going to segue into authority for our purpose. The same way we have authority of identity in Him, we have authority for purpose in Him. I remember teaching a couple of weeks ago, and I was saying how sometimes we can get caught up in what we are scared of, in the traumas we've experienced, in experiences, and also in the fear of the unknown. We can get caught up in what could not go right. What even sometimes I remember doing a teaching, and I was talking about the trauma of success. Some people are traumatized by their success. I know I've been, and sometimes that can really affect how we are willing to show up in our God-given purpose. But we must choose that to understand the position that we've been placed in. So you were born at the time that you were needed the most. You were born for this particular era. You were born for this particular dispensation. You were born to the parents you were born to for a reason. You were born to be a parent for a reason. You were born with the personality that you have for a reason. You were born with the complexion that you have for a reason. You were born with the countenance, with the DNA, with the wit, with the wisdom, with the intellect, with even the way you speak, the way you gather your thoughts, the way you articulate. You were born with the way you communicate. Well, before obviously like traumas and things like that, but you were born with these raw potentials for a reason, so that they could be navigated according to God's given purpose for you. And so we must return to God's given purpose over what our traumas have educated and informed us concerning. And so, yeah, there is authority for your identity, but there is also authority to walk in your purpose. God gives us everything concerning life and everything pertaining to life and godliness for us to be able to walk out. And so over this journey of our lives, we must learn to engage with the journey, engage with the process, because it doesn't happen overnight. The things I'm encouraging you to do now has been a journey, a learning experience of mastery, so that I can come into a space where I am now doing things out of my authority in God's given purpose for my life, out of God's given purpose or identity to me and for me. And so, yeah, we must learn to walk in our authority in identity and authority in purpose, and learn to choose it, even when there may be traumatic experiences, soul issues, psychological issues, mental health issues, or even like fear, fear, doubt, shame, unbelief that may come into and affect or impact even anxiety or fear of the future, fear of failure, fear of success, all of these things that may impact how we become and how we do. We must learn to look at those things and to make the choice to choose our authority and identity and our authority and purpose in God, even over the things that we may see or may be impacted by what we can see in our reality. So yeah, and one of the things I would say for me that has changed the game forever is sonship, is submission. It is having a level of community. It is being submitted to God. It is being realizing that I am God's child. And that may be a simple reality for some, but it has changed the game for me forever. I realize that if I come from God, then I must seek Him for the things that are of Him and the things that I need in order to become and in order to do. This process and this journey isn't easy, but if He's given me authority to do these things, then I must posture myself before Him in order to gain the full reward of what sonship in God looks like. And so I'm just going to share a few things with you that have really helped me in terms of navigating my authority and how this sonship and submission plays a role in my identity and purpose. One thing I think I spoke about in the very first episode, but one of the things that has changed the game forever for me is to seek God concerning who I am and what I will do. Now that may seem very simple. We're going to talk about prophetic administration as well in one of the next episodes, so I don't want to go too much into that either. But this is one thing that has changed the game forever for me. In my day-to-day living, I ask God, what do I need to do today to become who you would like me to become and to do all that you've asked me to do? Daily. That is a question I ask God daily. And now I translate that into my earthly time frame. So God, what do I need to do this week? I have a word for the day. I have a word for the week. I have a word for the month. I have a word from Him for the year, for the quarter. I have a word from Him for the next 5 years. I have a word from God concerning the next 10 years, but I always commit my days to Him, and not just my days as measures of time, but my days as measures of my becoming journey. And I also use I use those words to be able to go forth in becoming, to go forward in doing. Like a lot of the things that I'm doing now, a lot of people just think it's just ideas that sprang in my mind, but I spent time seeking God for creative ways to express all that He had placed on the inside of me to be able to share with you all. And not just in terms of doing, in terms of activity, but in terms of becoming also. So that's something I would like to share with you all as well. Always make sure you're seeking the heart of God concerning what He wants you to do. Because sometimes we place our desires before Him and we ask for Him to fulfill our desires, not recognizing that that may not be His perfect and pleasing will concerning us. I remember 2 years ago, I shared a statement, and till now, I still get people atting me on Instagram and DMing me on Instagram that word is like really still impacting them positively. And I remember sharing it with people and saying that I can shout with a voice of triumph in any season, no matter what is going on, because I know that it may not look to me like the perfect scenario, but God is working for my favor. He is working so that I can be in a place of victory. He is working so that I can be in a place of of recovery. He is working so that I can be in a place of good things, of great things, of excellent things, no matter what it looks like to my natural eye. And I still get people messaging me till today saying, like, I'm still learning this principle. I'm still trying to become acquainted with this principle. And I agree, it's a daily thing, but we must seek God. Our days are in his hands. And so we must learn to return to him to ask, teach me to number my days. And even things like, even in terms of position and posture, I think I spoke about it last week, but we speak about like prayer, and we speak about it as communion with God. And I think something that he really desires to get back from us is when we come to him and give him the first fruits of our emotions, the first fruits of our thought life, the first fruits of our devotion. And that is when we can come to him and even say things like, God, I don't believe, help my unbelief. God, I really doubt the fact that this thing may turn in my favor. It may be for my good, because I really can't see any good coming from this. But when we're able to place those things before him and to ask him, how do I navigate the next according to your plan and purpose? Then we realize we come into a fresh place where we can obey quickly, because we know that he has our best interests at heart. I may think I have my best interests at heart, but they may just be selfish interest, things that will give me momentary pleasure. But I'm a stickler for deferred gratification. I love when you can work for something for a long period of time and get a reward for it, for work ethic and for discipline. I'm a stickler for deferred gratification. But God has our best interests at heart. And so sometimes we may get instant gratification from something, but it may not be the best decision we've made in the long run. And so I think it's something that we need to even learn in submission, but that we must seek God for the things that he has planned and purposed for us. It becomes so much easier to obey when you trust his voice. And you can only learn to trust him he has earned your trust by you being able to seek him, obey him, and to see it turn out for your good. And that history with God then informs our future with him, and we choose to obey him because we trust him. If he tells us, wait, don't do this yet, stay in this place of waiting for this period of time, we are willing to follow it through because we can trust him. And I want to get to a place where I trust him wholeheartedly. I don't double think a decision. I don't double think something that he's told me. I don't double think his will for me, because I know it has my best interest at heart. And even if that best interest is a lesson, I'll take a lesson any day over failure in my identity or failure in my purpose. And so, yeah, I would encourage us that we must learn to honor our position as sons of God, and learn to honor our posture as sons of God, but even more so learning to live out that posture. And that posture comes first with having a seek life, which is to seek God for his will and plan and purposes. Not only that, authority, sonship, and submission guards our hearts. Guards our hearts. Some of us have dealt with so much heartbreak because we are yet to agree and to say yes to the call. Now, sometimes I know in Christianese we can say yes to the call, and people can automatically assume that I'm talking about saying yes to becoming a minister, or saying yes to doing global ministry. And now that's not everyone's calling. But if I believe in my source, if I believe in my authority, if I believe in my posture with God, then I won't even be affected or impacted by somebody else's ministry that may be front facing in comparison to mine. I'll talk about this in our next in one of our next series or seasons. But something I love to tell people all the time is that um I'm a good number two. I'm a very good number two. I'm not really a front facing kind of person in terms of like things that I'm doing or called to do. I'm usually a number two, or like around, in and around leadership, but not necessarily the front facing or the face of the thing that I am working in. Now, because of that being a good number two, sometimes people can automatically assume that, like, oh, I may deal with like comparison and envy and jealousy. And no, I don't. To God be the glory. It's not a pride. I'm not saying that from a prideful place, but I genuinely don't deal with envy, comparison, and jealousy, especially in this latter part of my journey so far, because I genuinely am okay with who God has made me. I'm more than okay. I am resolved. There are two different things. A lot of people can be like, no, I'm okay with that. So like that doesn't really impact me. But one thought that is meditated upon too long can take them into a place of comparison. Now, I didn't want to be on the edge, on the borderline of being knocked into comparison, or a place where I'm comparing myself to other people. And so I had to become resolved. And so I am now resolved in my authority as a child of God, in my authority in the identity that He's given me, in my authority in the purpose that that God has placed before me. So whether or not I'm front facing or not, I am resolved that I will make an impact in the earth. I will have a legacy that outlives me, not because I've worked hard for it and not because I've done all the greatest things, but simply because, because I've never made mistakes. No, I have, and I've not always been on the right path or in the place that God has chosen for me. But as of right now, my authority is in Him. And so I am resolved in that place with God. So I don't have to compare myself to somebody who even may be on a similar route to me, doing a similar thing to me. There's room for us all. I don't have to compare myself to you because I have authority in my posture. Yeah, I have authority in my position. And sometimes we speak to the people who have been, who are being envied or who are being jealous, but we don't always speak to the people who are envious or jealous. The only thing I would say to you, if you're dealing with that right now, is to become resolved in what God has for you. First, to find it out, but then to become resolved. Make a vow to God, to who God has made you to be and what He has asked you to become, so that you don't you don't begin to look comparatively at other people. Now, am I saying don't look at anybody and glean from what they're doing, learn from what they're doing, observe? No, that's antithetical to every message I'll ever teach you. But what I am saying is, I would love for us to become so resolved in who we are that we are not shaken because somebody else is becoming. We are not shaken because somebody else is doing. I will always encourage you to truly become and have authority in who God has made you to be and what He's called you to do. Now, this episode is getting super duper long, and I don't want you guys to have to listen for like 40 minutes to an entire episode. But I do want to share this with you. Oh, fun fact. Fun fact is that I I'm going to give you a personal fun fact this week, because I know I've been giving you some like really random fun facts, which is cool. With that's cool too. But I want to give you a personal fun fact. So I always share this at icebreakers. So whenever we have to do an icebreaker task, like at networking events, at church stuff, at business stuff, at in friendship circles, whenever I have to do an icebreaker, this is always the fun fact I give. Fun, random, interesting, crazy fact about me is I played 11 different sports up until the age of 18. Now, I have torn tendons. I have quite literal like marks and stuff and bruises still from the different sports that I played. But my favorite among all of them was football and basketball. But I played, and I didn't play like, I have nothing against y'all, but I didn't play like cute football or cute basketball. Now I'm telling you, like I played rough. So yeah, that's my fun fact for this week. I played 11 different sports. Not so much anymore. I just about go to the gym once every like 6 months. But yeah, like I enjoy sport and I enjoy watching it as I've gotten older, not as much engagement. I choose to engage in home workouts or walks now. But yeah, I loved sports when I was younger. If I could go back without as many injuries, I would. But until we figure out how to play sports without injuries, I just ain't gonna play. Okay. All right. So that's my fun fact for this week, and also to give you the recalibrate challenge of the week. Also, the recalibrate challenge of this week is to write 7 I am statements. 7 I am statements. Now, I'm not just talking about I am beautiful, I am smart, I am witty. Like those things may all be true. But I want you to write 7 I am statements that will really speak to who you are becoming. So I'll give you an example. An I am statement that I've had to make for myself this year is that I am someone called to deal with people. Now, not deal in a bad sense, but like I am someone who is called to handle the matters of people's hearts. And I've come to terms with that. I used to call myself an agony aunt, and it used to really rub me up the wrong way because I used to be like that. I'm not just here to sit and listen to people's problems. But one of my I am statements is that I am someone that God trusts with the matters of people's hearts. And so I am learning to see the treasure in who I am versus it being a restriction, a limitation, a limiting belief. So now it is an empowering belief about who I and the role my heart and my hands play in being involved in people's stories and lives. So I want you to write 7 I am statements similar to that, that you can use to keep as a vow to have authority and to become resolved in who God has made you and what he has called you to do. Now, if you made it to this point in the episode, you're a trooper, and you deserve all the accolades. Okay, honey? And so please feel free to engage with the Recalibrate Challenge of the week. Download the episode, share it with everyone that you know. I say this every week, but for real, share it, guys. But yeah, share this episode with everyone that you know. Subscribe, download, rate, review, leave a little review. Let me see what you're thinking and your feedback is on the episode. Tag me on Instagram, guys. If you listen to it and a particular section of it gets to you, it ministers to you, it does something for you, please feel free to tag me on Instagram at Glorio_ at the Recalibrate podcast, and feel free to if you want to send a long detailed email, recalibrateuk@gmail.com. If you would like to send feedback, if you would like to be on the podcast, if you would like to engage with the podcast or become part of our community that we're building around here, it's recalibrateuk@gmail.com. Now, some of you have shot suggestions over at me. I had someone suggest a book club. Someone else suggested books and journals and other online resources. But even if you have ideas for that, please feel free to email recalibrateuk@gmail.com. I am going to be back here next week with you guys, and I can't wait to share more with you. Please do share, but I'll see you on the other side. I love you guys. I appreciate you so much. Bye.